What's up, short attention span history nerds? It's been a while. My name is Mike and you're watching 10 Minute History. Let's chit-chat a little bit about war, and more specifically about our great American soldiers, and more specifically about our great soldiers that are wounded in battle. These are the men and women that should be on the face of trading cards. They should never have to wait in line, ever pay for a beer, and insurance should always be free for life and a hell of a lot better than mine. They've earned it. Okay, story time. There was once this dude named PFC Clifton A. DeWitt. He was a soldier in World War II, and in the heat of battle on Okinawa, he and his men were in the fight for their lives. Bullets were whizzing by their heads, bombs were going off way too close for comfort. As Private First Class DeWitt was calling over for one of his men to take cover and lower his position, everything went black. DeWitt never heard the explosion that killed 3 of his men and knocked him unconscious and shredded his arm, ripping into his femoral artery and sending small pieces of shrapnel into the rest of his body. It was May 19, 1945 on a hill called Sugarloaf during the Battle of Okinawa. And at the moment, DeWitt had spent less than 9 months in the U.S. Marine Corps. However, he had been in combat since April 1st, landing on Okinawa, which was enough to make anyone a combat veteran. On May 19th, DeWitt and his unit, 1st Company, 4th Marine, 6th Marine Division, were in the process of relieving the 22nd Marine Regiment on top of Sugarloaf Hill when they were hit. He soon joined 70 of his comrades who were wounded or killed in the few hours it took to exchange places with the 22nd Marine. Now, here's the kicker. As DeWitt's body was being lowered into the grave that had been freshly dug for him, he regained consciousness and said, "Hey guys, please don't bury me." Afterwards, the medics that had worked on DeWitt stated that he had no pulse, had no signs of life, and he was declared KIA. Makes me wonder which would be more scarier, being buried alive or having a dead guy tell me not to bury him. The fight against the Surrey line continued for the 4th Marines, but for DeWitt the war was over. From that moment on, he joined a new group of distinguished service members, recipients of the Purple Heart. Now, let's get into the history of the Purple Heart. Okay, quick facts. It began as the badge of military merit, was established by George Washington on August 7th, 1782. There were very few awards at the time that common soldiers could receive in service for their country, and most awards, decorations, and medals were given to great commanders, aristocrats, or kings. But with a new country came a new spirit. A spirit that recognized the sacrifice of all of its soldiers regardless of their rank. America was only 6 years old, and it jammed its thumb into the eye of King George III by kicking him out of the country and then giving recognition to everyone willing to fight to keep him out of the country. Come on, say it with me. America. Now, seeing that the Continental Army was fighting a tough campaign with scarce supplies and low pay, Washington felt a need to encourage the troops by establishing a award for valor and meritorious service. Washington presented his new badge of military merit, which was a Purple Heart made of cloth, and it was to be worn over the left breast. The badge was only given to 3 sergeants in his army. Despite being a meritorious badge for all soldiers, the badge of military merit would soon be forgotten. It was forgotten for 150 years, and all that time, only the original 3 sergeants were known to have been issued the medal. It wasn't until World War I that an organized hierarchy of valor and merit medals began to take shape. At that point, the only American award that could be earned by soldiers and officers alike was the Medal of Honor, and that medal is no easy feat to obtain. But with our boys being overseas and working side by side with other Allied soldiers who had numerous medals for different levels of valor and merit, the U.S. soldiers were like, "Hey, America, what's up? What's up with these guys looking better than us with their chests full of brass and pretty ribbons?" And the U.S. responded by saying, "Okay, we got you boys. How about 2 more really cool medals?" Congress created the Distinguished Service Cross and the Distinguished Service Medal. Now the U.S. boys could wear their uniforms to the pub and pick up more chicks than the Brits and the French and be like, "That's right, America, But in 1932, U.S. Army Chief of Staff Douglas MacArthur ran across some paperwork regarding the badge of military merit and renamed it the Purple Heart because, after all, it's a Purple Heart. MacArthur issued Order 66 and began killing Jedis all across the galaxy. Master Yoda and... Sorry, that's the wrong story. General MacArthur issued General Order Number 3 on February 22, 1932, and declared that the newly named Purple Heart would be awarded to meritorious service only in the U.S. Army. In an attached line in Order Number 3, MacArthur included the words, "A wound which necessitates treatment by a medical officer and which is received in action with an enemy of the United States or as a result of an act of such enemy may be construed as resulting from a singularly meritorious act of essential service." The addition of the wound criteria for the new Purple Heart changed everything for men and women wounded by enemy actions. Now here's a crazy fact. Between 1932 and 1941, the beginning of World War II, roughly 78,000 Purple Hearts were issued. It seems that the U.S. decided to go way back to the Civil War and start issuing Purple Hearts to anyone and everyone that qualified for it. In fact, it was very common for soldiers to write and apply for the medal. If their letter was approved, and most of them were, then the medal was just mailed to the recipient regardless of the conflict. As the first Japanese torpedo slipped into the shallow waters of Pearl Harbor on the morning of December 7th, 1941, the Purple Heart was still only a U.S. Army award because it was originally created by George Washington, Army, and reinstated by the Army Chief of Staff. The Purple Heart could not be awarded to any other service branch. But when other branches began complaining, it all changed. This change occurred over the course of 1942 with three major decisions. First, in April 1942, the War Department decided that the Purple Heart would be issued to service members who were killed in action as recognition of their sacrifice. In September, the meritorious service element of the Purple Heart was removed from its qualification and given to the newly created Legion of Merit. From this moment on, the Purple Heart could only be awarded for being wounded or killed by enemy action. Finishing out in 1942, President Franklin Roosevelt authorized the Navy Department to award the Purple Heart to any Navy, Marine, or Coast Guard personnel who were wounded or killed in action beginning on September 7th, 1941. Way to ruin it for the Army, Frankie. Just kidding. Squids, crayon eaters, armed bass fishermen, country club members, and Death Star employees deserve the medal too. By the end of World War I, over 1 million Purple Hearts were presented to men and women wounded or killed by enemy action. When the United States entered the war, each service branch initiated the process of planning for war. Using experience, statistics, and best guesses, they determined how many troops and supplies were needed to win World War II. Sometimes they planned too much. Shocking, I know. Sometimes they planned too little. Again, it's all a guessing game. For example, the U.S. Army determined that it would need about 9 million servicemen organized in over 200 divisions to defeat Axis powers. In reality, the overall number of troops was pretty close, but the overall estimate of divisions was way off. They only needed around 90 to win the war. Initially, orders for the Purple Heart in 1942 were thought to be sufficient to last the war, but the casualties mounted. Driven by the horrific toll of the dead and wounded, such as Clifton DeWitt on Okinawa, the U.S. Navy and Army kept adding to their orders. Four main manufacturers initially were producing around 600,000 medals a year. By the end of the war, 1.5 million Purple Hearts had been struck in anticipation of the final cost of victory. Although casualties were high and much higher than expected, they did not meet the dizzying numbers, resulting in a surplus of almost 500,000 medals. Now, these medals have a legacy that continue to this day because, unlike other surplus items of World War II, Purple Hearts remain in inventory, being issued during Korea, Vietnam, and into the modern conflict against terrorism. As a symbol, there are few other U.S. military awards that evoke such instant reaction, understanding, and appreciation for the cost of service to one's country. For us civilians, It's easy to get lost on that crayon box of medals on a soldier's chest, but the Purple Heart is always easily identifiable. So that's the quick 10-minute history of the Purple Heart. Are there any other military facts that you'd like me to cover? Let me know in the comment section below. If you've received a Purple Heart like my friend Chris Neal, who incidentally received 2 of them because he's a badass, I want to thank you for your service and sacrifice to our great country. And if you like short history lessons with humor and sarcasm, please subscribe to 10-Minute History. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Either way, it allows me to learn which topics you, my lovely viewers, like to learn about. Until next time. During the Battle of Okinawa, and that moment, DeWitt had spent less than 9 months in the U.S. Marine Corps. Damn it, I keep scratching my nose. I look like a crackhead. Washington presented his new badge of military service. That's not what it says. Washington presented his new badge of military merit, which was a Purple Heart made of cloth, and it was to be worn over the hell was that? 3 sergeants were known to have the hell is that? Why is my wife's office making all this noise?